The thing about monitoring a military academy filled with apex predators from 40 different worlds is that you get used to violence. You expect it, actually. What you do not expect is for the surveillance system to fail at the exact moment 3 of your most aggressive cadets decide to corner the quiet human in Training Bay 7. My name is Krell, and I have been head of security at the Galactic Military Academy on Station Vex 9 for the past 12 cycles. I have seen Korgath cadets break through reinforced steel with their bare claws. I have watched Thraxian warriors move so fast they appear as blurs on camera. I have even witnessed a Zelthian female take down 5 opponents simultaneously, using nothing but her tail and sheer predatory instinct. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I saw, or rather did not see. On the evening of rotation 847, the human had arrived 6 weeks prior. His name was Marcus, and he was the first of his species to attend our academy under the new Terran exchange program. Humans were a recent addition to the Galactic Council, barely a decade into their membership, and most species still knew very little about them. They looked soft, pink or brown skin with no scales, no natural armor, no claws to speak of. Their teeth were laughably flat compared to proper predator dentition. They had no venom glands, no sensory tentacles, no electromagnetic detection capabilities. When Marcus first walked through our halls, several cadets actually laughed. Not to his face, mind you, because even predators understand basic courtesy, but the consensus was clear. Humans were weak. Humans were prey animals who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Humans did not belong in a military academy designed for the galaxy's finest hunters. Marcus never gave anyone reason to think otherwise. He was polite, respectful, and kept mostly to himself. He performed adequately in physical training, though he was nowhere near the top of his class. His academic scores were decent. His combat simulations were average at best. He ate alone in the canteen, reading data tablets while other cadets formed their pack bonds and hunting partnerships. I had flagged him as low priority in my security assessments. No behavioral issues, no conflicts, no problems whatsoever. That should have been my first warning. In an academy full of aggressive territorial predator species, someone who causes 0 problems is either incredibly skilled at avoiding conflict or incredibly dangerous when conflict finds them anyway. I am ashamed to admit I assumed the former. The incident began at approximately 1900 hours station time. I was in my office reviewing the day's training reports and monitoring the 17 different camera feeds scattered throughout the academy's 12 levels. Most cadets had retired to their quarters or the recreation facilities. The training bays were supposed to be empty, locked down for nightly maintenance. That is why my attention immediately snapped to Bay 7 when motion sensors triggered. 3 heat signatures appeared on my tactical display, then a 4th. I pulled up the camera feed and felt my scales prickle with anticipation. Vorgash, Dronix, and Silvara. Of course it was them. The 3 most aggressive cadets in their respective combat classes, and coincidentally, the 3 who had been most vocal about their disdain for the human presence at the academy. Vorgash was a Thraxian, all muscle and rage wrapped in dark purple exoskeleton plating. His species evolved as ambush hunters on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. They were fast, vicious, and proud to the point of arrogance. Dronix represented the Korgath, a species of massive bear-like predators who stood nearly 8 feet tall and could crush bone with casual grip strength. Silvara was Zelthian, and while her species was smaller than the other 2, they made up for it with lightning reflexes and a nasty habit of playing with their prey before finishing it. Together they made an intimidating trio. Separately, each one could take down most opponents without breaking a sweat. And there, standing in the center of the training bay, with his hands casually in his pockets, was Marcus. I immediately activated the emergency comm channel. "This is Krell. I have a potential situation in Training Bay 7. 3 cadets have cornered the human. Dispatching security team now." But even as I spoke, I kept my eyes on the monitors. Vorgash was circling Marcus slowly, his mandibles clicking in what I recognized as predatory excitement. Dronix had positioned himself near the bay's only exit, blocking any escape route. Silvara was coiled on one of the equipment racks, her tail swaying back and forth like a metronome, counting down to violence. Marcus had not moved. He just stood there, watching them, with an expression I could not quite read. Not fear, exactly. Not aggression, either. It was something else, something patient. "We have been wondering, human," Vorgash's voice crackled through the audio feed, "what it takes to make your kind fight. You sit in our classes. You use our facilities. You pretend to be a warrior. But we see the truth. You are soft, weak, prey." Marcus still did not respond. His heart rate, according to the biometric sensors all cadets were required to wear, had barely elevated. That was odd. Most species showed significant stress responses when confronted by multiple predators. Their pupils dilated, their breathing quickened, their bodies prepared for fight or flight. Marcus looked like he was waiting for a shuttle. "Nothing to say?" Silvara hissed from her perch, her voice carrying that distinctive sibilant quality of her species. "Perhaps we should test those human reflexes, see if the soft pink thing can actually defend itself." That was when Dronix moved. The Korgath was not subtle. He charged forward with a roar that should have frozen Marcus in place, his massive arms spread wide to grapple and crush. And Marcus finally moved. But not the way I expected. He did not run. He did not dodge to the side. He stepped forward inside Dronix's reach and did something with his hands that I could not quite follow on the camera. The Korgath's roar cut off abruptly and he stumbled, his momentum carrying him past the human and into a stack of training equipment with a thunderous crash. Before I could process what I had just seen, camera 3 went dark, just static, then camera 5, then camera 1. "What in the frozen depths?" I muttered, frantically switching between feeds. This was impossible. Our surveillance system was military grade, designed to function in combat zones and hostile environments. Cameras did not just fail, not like this, not all at once. I had 7 cameras covering Training Bay 7 from multiple angles, and within 15 seconds, 6 of them were offline. Only camera 9 remained, positioned high in the corner of the bay, and its view was partially obscured by support beams. I could see movement, shadows shifting in the dim emergency lighting that had automatically activated when the main systems failed. I could hear sounds, impacts, a Thraxian battle shriek that cut off too quickly. Silvara's hissing turned into something that might have been pain or might have been shock. My security team was 3 minutes out. I watched the last camera feed with growing disbelief. The shadows moved wrong, too fast, too precise. There was a pattern to it, something methodical and calculated that did not match the chaotic brawl I expected. Then I heard it. Breathing. Heavy, steady breathing that echoed through the audio feed. Not panicked, not exhausted, just constant, rhythmic, like a machine running at optimal efficiency. And then, exactly 47 seconds after camera 3 first went dark, camera 9 died too. Complete blackout, no video, no audio, nothing but the blinking red indicators showing system failure across all feeds in Training Bay 7. I was already running. My office door slammed open and I sprinted down the corridor, my claws clicking against the metal floor plating. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Security protocols demanded I wait for backup, but every instinct I had developed over 12 cycles of service was screaming that something unprecedented was happening in that training bay, something that would change everything we thought we knew. about the soft, weak, harmless humans. I reached the bay entrance just as my security team arrived from the opposite corridor. Lieutenant Raxus, a veteran Krell like myself, had his weapon drawn. "Sir, should we breach with stun protocols?" I overrode the door lock manually. The heavy blast door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and we entered with weapons raised, expecting carnage. What we found was silence. The bay's emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Equipment was scattered across the floor. One of the reinforced training dummies had been torn from its mounting, and there, in the center of the room, sat Marcus, just sitting, his back against the wall, his breathing steady, a small cut above his left eye that leaked a thin trail of red blood down his face. He looked up as we entered, and I swear to every deity in the known galaxy, he smiled. Not a predatory smile, not a threatening smile, just a small, tired smile like someone who had just finished an unpleasant but necessary chore. 3 meters to his left, Vorgash lay unconscious, his arms bound behind his back with his own equipment harness. 2 meters to his right, Dronix was similarly restrained, a massive bruise already forming across his jaw, and above them, hanging from the equipment rack, where she had been perched earlier, Silvara dangled upside down, wrapped in what appeared to be her own tail, out cold. "Evening, Krell," Marcus said quietly, his voice completely calm. "Sorry about the cameras, things got a bit rough." I stood in the doorway of Training Base 7, trying to process what my eyes were showing me, but my brain refused to accept. 3 of the Academy's most dangerous cadets were unconscious, restrained, and very clearly defeated. The human sat against the wall like he had just finished a light workout, instead of fighting for his life against multiple apex predators. My secondary eyelids flickered, a Vaxian stress response I had not experienced in years. Lieutenant Raxus moved past me, weapons still raised, scanning the room for additional threats that simply were not there. The medical team arrived moments later, their equipment clattering as they rushed to assess the fallen cadets. Dr. Talindra, a Morphian female with 6 arms and more medical experience than anyone else on the station, went to Vorgash first. She ran her scanners over his unconscious form, her expression shifting from concern to confusion. "Vitals are stable," she announced, 2 of her hands working controls while the others examined the Thraxian physically. Severe concussion, fractured mandible, 3 cracked ribs, and significant soft tissue damage to both shoulder joints. The injuries are precise, almost surgical. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike for maximum effectiveness with minimum lethality. She moved to Dronix next, her scanners humming. "This one has a dislocated jaw, hairline fracture to the skull, and his right knee has been hyperextended. Again, precise trauma. Deliberate placement." I watched Marcus carefully as Talindra examined Silvara. The human had not moved from his position against the wall. He was watching the medical team work, but there was no satisfaction in his expression, no pride. If anything, he looked disappointed. That disturbed me more than the violence itself. "Marcus," I said quietly, keeping my voice level, "what happened here?" He met my eyes, and I saw something in his gaze that made my scales ripple again. It was the look of someone who had done exactly what they needed to do and nothing more. "They wanted to test me," he replied simply. "They got their test." That was not good enough. I gestured for Raxus to lower his weapon and moved closer to the human, crouching down to his level. The cameras failed. All 7 cameras in this bay went offline during the fight. "That is not a coincidence. That is not system malfunction. What did you do?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering his answer. "Humans have this thing we call spatial awareness. We evolved as hunters on a world where being able to track prey and avoid predators in low-light conditions meant survival. When the first camera went out, I realized the emergency lighting would create shadows. Shadows I could use. I might have encouraged the other cameras to fail by redirecting certain impacts toward their mounting points. Encouraged. He said it like he had suggested they take a break instead of systematically eliminating our surveillance coverage while fighting 3 trained warriors in near darkness. I felt a cold sensation spreading through my core, the Vaxian equivalent of dread. This was not luck. This was not panic. This was tactical thinking under pressure that would make veteran soldiers pause. You disabled our security systems deliberately while defending yourself from multiple attackers, I said slowly. Do you understand how that sounds? Marcus shrugged, and somehow that casual gesture was more unsettling than anything else. They backed me into a corner, Krell. Literally. What did they expect? I told them during processing that humans do not do well with confinement or threats. It is in our psychological profile. We have this evolutionary quirk where being trapped triggers a rather extreme stress response. Before I could respond, Vorgash groaned and began regaining consciousness. Talindra immediately administered a sedative, but not before the Thraxian's eyes focused on Marcus, with something I had never seen in a predator species before. Fear, pure instinctive fear. He moved in the dark, Vorgash rasped, his translator struggling with his damaged mandibles. We could not see him, but he saw everything. He was everywhere at once. His eyes, they reflected the emergency lighting like a nocturnal hunter. We thought humans were prey, but we were wrong. We were so wrong. The medical team transported all 3 cadets to the infirmary within minutes, leaving me alone with Marcus and a training bay that looked like a small war had occurred inside it. I ordered Raxus to seal the area and began my official investigation, though every instinct told me this incident was far bigger than a simple cadet altercation. Marcus remained cooperative, answering questions with the same calm demeanor he had shown since we arrived. Yes, he had defended himself. No, he had not intended to cause permanent harm. Yes, he understood the severity of the situation, but what disturbed me most was his heart rate data from the biometric sensor. During the entire fight, his pulse had never exceeded 130 beats per minute. For context, a Vaxian in similar circumstances would hit 200 easily. Most species would be approaching cardiac stress levels. Marcus had been in a life-or-death struggle against 3 apex predators, and his body had treated it like moderate exercise. I filed my preliminary report and sent it directly to Academy Commander Horvath, knowing this would reach the highest levels of station command before morning. What I did not expect was the response I received 40 minutes later. Horvath wanted Marcus tested, not interrogated, not disciplined, tested. And he wanted our best combat instructor to conduct the evaluation personally. That meant Braxis. If you have never met a Korgath who has survived 30 years of frontline combat across 4 different wars, consider yourself fortunate. Braxis was a legend in military circles, a warrior who had trained 3 generations of cadets and never, not once, been defeated in sanctioned combat. He stood 8.5 feet tall, covered in scars that told stories of battles most soldiers only heard about in training vids. His left eye was cybernetic, replacing one lost in close quarters fighting on the Terminus front. When he spoke, other Korgath listened. When he moved, predators got out of his way. I found Braxis in the main combat arena the next morning, reviewing footage of the training bay incident that our technical team had managed to partially reconstruct from corrupted data files. He did not look up as I approached, his massive form completely still as he watched the flickering images on the holo display. What little footage remained showed only shadows and brief glimpses of movement, but it was enough. enough to see Marcus moving with a fluidity that should not exist in a species that lacked natural weapons or armor. Enough to see him turn Dronix's charge against him, using leverage and timing instead of strength. Enough to see him vanish into darkness like smoke. "Commander Horvath wants you to test the human," I said, though I suspected Braxis already knew. The old warrior finally turned his cybernetic eye toward me, and I saw something I had rarely witnessed in a Korgath. Curiosity. "I have fought representatives from 73 different species," Braxis rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "I have studied combat philosophy from 100 worlds, but I have never seen anyone fight the way this human fought. No wasted movement, no emotional response, just efficient violence applied with precision." The test was scheduled for that afternoon in the primary combat arena, and word spread through the academy faster than a hull breach alarm. By the time Marcus arrived, wearing standard training gear and looking completely unbothered by the attention, nearly 200 cadets had gathered in the observation galleries. They wanted to see the human humiliated. They wanted confirmation that the previous night had been a fluke, that 3 of their fellow cadets had simply underestimated their opponent and paid the price. They wanted their worldview restored. Braxis stood in the center of the arena, arms crossed, watching Marcus approach with an expression I could not read. "The rules are simple," the Korgath instructor announced, his voice carrying easily through the space. "This is a standard combat evaluation, non-lethal force only. The match ends when one participant yields or is rendered unable to continue. Do you understand, Marcus?" The human nodded, rolling his shoulders in a loose, relaxed gesture that made several cadets exchange confused glances. Predators did not relax before combat. They tensed, they focused, they prepared their bodies for explosive action. Marcus looked like he was about to go for a walk. I took my position in the observation booth alongside Commander Horvath, who had arrived to witness this personally. The Korgath commander was a political creature, always calculating angles and implications, and I could see his mind working as he watched the 2 figures below. "If the human defeats Braxis," Horvath said quietly, "we will need to completely reassess our classification of Earth as a low-threat world. The Council will demand answers." I did not respond. I was too focused on the arena floor, where Braxis had dropped into a combat stance that I had seen him use to devastating effect against opponents twice his size. The match began without ceremony. Braxis moved first, a testing strike with his right arm that could have shattered ribs if it connected. Marcus sidestepped, not away, but at an angle that kept him inside Braxis's reach. The instructor's cybernetic eye tracked the movement, and he adjusted immediately, following up with a left hook that should have caught the human cleanly. Should have. Marcus ducked under it, his movements economical and precise, then retreated 3 steps to reset distance. The arena fell silent. Braxis had just thrown 2 strikes that would have ended most fights before they began, and the human had avoided both without apparent effort. I saw the shift in Braxis's posture, the subtle change that meant he was recalculating his opponent's skill level. "Interesting," the old warrior said, beginning to circle. "You have training, real training, not the academic nonsense we teach here." Marcus did not reply verbally, but his body language changed slightly. His weight shifted forward almost imperceptibly. His hands came up into a guard position that I did not recognize from any standard combat form in our database. And then he smiled. Not the tired smile from the night before. This was something else. Something that made my survival instincts scream warnings my conscious mind could not quite articulate. Braxis saw it too. I watched his pupils dilate, his muscles tense, his entire massive frame preparing for something he sensed but could not predict. When Marcus moved, even Braxis barely reacted in time. The human closed the distance between himself and Braxis in a blur of motion that seemed impossible for a species without enhanced musculature or cybernetic augmentation. He did not charge like Dronix had. He did not rely on speed like a Thraxian or coiled energy like a Zelthian. Marcus moved like water, flowing around Braxis's defensive posture and striking at the instructor's lead knee with a low kick that connected with a sound like a hammer hitting meat. Braxis grunted, shifted his weight, and retaliated with a backhand that would have decapitated a lesser opponent. Marcus dropped beneath it, rolled forward, and came up inside the Korgath's guard again. 2 rapid strikes to the floating ribs, both precisely placed, both designed to disrupt breathing rather than cause lasting damage. Then he was gone, dancing back out of range before Braxis could grapple him. The observation galleries erupted in shocked murmurs. No one, absolutely no one, landed clean hits on Braxis during evaluation matches. The fight continued for another 6 minutes, and I watched with growing fascination as a pattern emerged. Marcus was not trying to win, he was studying. Every exchange gave him information about Braxis's reach, reaction time, preferred angles of attack. The human was treating this like a scientific experiment, gathering data with each near miss and glancing blow. Braxis recognized it too. I could see the frustration building in the old warrior's movements, the way his strikes became slightly more aggressive, slightly less controlled. He was being analyzed by prey, and his predator instincts did not appreciate the reversal. "He is playing with Braxis," Commander Horvath muttered beside me, his tone caught between disbelief and concern. A human, a species we classified as having moderate physical capabilities at best. He is toying with our finest combat instructor. I wanted to disagree, but the evidence was undeniable. Finally, Braxis changed tactics. Instead of trying to land a decisive blow, he focused on controlling space, cutting off Marcus's movement options and forcing him into a corner of the arena. It was a strategy that had worked against countless opponents. Box them in, eliminate their mobility advantage, then use superior size and strength to finish the fight. Marcus let himself be cornered. That should have been my second warning. The human backed up until he was within 2 meters of the arena wall, his options apparently limited, his escape routes blocked by 8.5 feet of angry Korgath veteran. Braxis moved in for what should have been the finishing sequence, and Marcus did something I had never seen in 40 years of watching combat sports. He ran up the wall. Literally ran up the vertical surface using his momentum and some technique I could not begin to explain, planted 1 foot against the reinforced barrier, and launched himself over Braxis's head in a flip that defied several laws of physics I thought were universal. He landed behind the instructor, swept Braxis's legs with a move that used the Korgath's own mass against him, and had the old warrior on his back before anyone in the observation galleries could fully process what had just happened. Marcus's hand was positioned at Braxis's throat, not touching but close enough to make the point absolutely clear. In a real fight with real intent, that would have been a killing blow. The arena fell completely silent. Braxis stared up at the human with his cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted focus, his breathing heavy but controlled. For 5 long seconds, neither of them moved. Then Braxis started laughing, deep, booming laughter that echoed off the arena walls and broke the tension like shattering glass. "I yield," he said, still laughing. "Ancestors preserve me. I actually yield. The human wins." The observation galleries exploded into chaos. Cadets were shouting, some in their native languages, others in Galactic Common, all of them trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Marcus offered Braxis a hand up, which the Korgath accepted with a grin that showed far too many teeth. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Braxis asked as he regained his feet. Marcus shrugged, that same casual gesture that I was beginning to recognize as a deflection technique. Earth has about 200 countries and territories. Most of them developed their own combat systems over thousands of years. I studied 17 different martial arts before I was 20. Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history. We got pretty good at it. That statement hung in the air like a plasma grenade waiting to detonate. Commander Horvath's expression had gone carefully neutral, which I knew meant his mind was racing through political implications. The tribunal convened 3 days later in the main assembly hall. Vorgash, Dronix, and Silvara had recovered enough to attend, though all three looked substantially humbler than before their encounter with Marcus. The charges were straightforward. 3 cadets had violated Academy regulations by initiating an unsanctioned combat situation with intent to harm a fellow student. Marcus had defended himself within acceptable parameters, though the destruction of surveillance equipment remained a complicating factor. I presented my findings to the panel of 5 senior officers, including Commander Horvath and Braxis. The evidence was clear. The instigators had admitted their intent. The only real question was what precedent this would set moving forward. Gregor, the tribunal's lead adjudicator and a member of the Vrel Collective, examined the compiled data with his compound eyes reflecting the hollow displays. This tribunal finds the human, Marcus, acted within his rights to self-defense. No disciplinary action will be taken against him. Furthermore, this academy will implement new protocols for understanding human physiology and psychology. He turned his attention to the 3 predator cadets. "You 3 sought to prove your superiority through violence against a species you assumed was weak. Your assumption was incorrect. Your actions were dishonorable. You are hereby suspended from advanced combat training for 2 cycles and will serve remedial duty in station maintenance." Vorgash accepted the judgment with a bow, his mandibles clicking in what I now recognized as embarrassed submission. Marcus stood when called and addressed the tribunal directly. "Permission to speak?" Gregor nodded. "Humans don't believe strength is about domination. Where I come from, real strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves. I didn't want to hurt anyone, I just wanted them to stop."